Hello, and welcome to the overview of Bulletin 137, Louisiana Early Learning Center Licensing Regulations. My name is Andrea Burrell, and I am the Internal Operations Senior Manager here at the Division of Licensing, and I will be presenting this series to you. Overview of the Early Learning Center Licensing Regulations. Every 3 years, Bulletin 137 requires a review. A task force is created to review and provide input of these changes. The task force is made up of representatives from child care providers, child advocates, Office of Fire Marshal, Office of Public Health, State Police, and the department. These licensing regulations contain regulations for all license types, Type 1, Type 2, and Type 3 licensed child care centers. These regulations apply to all licenses unless expressly stated otherwise in regulations. These licensing regulations have the potential to impact over 1,400 early learning centers as well as 40,000 children and families. Introduction to Course 1. The objective of this course is to provide an overview of the regulations found in the following chapters. Chapter 1, General Provisions. Chapter 3, Licensure. Chapter 5, Ownership of Early Learning Centers. Chapter 7, Licensing Process and Procedures. Chapter 9, Changes Requiring a New License. If you have any additional questions related to Early Learning Center regulations, they can be directed to your licensing consultant. You can email ldelicensing@la.gov or contact your licensing consultant at 225-342-9905. To help you dig deeper into the licensing regulations, there will be a quiz at the end of each chapter. Chapter 1, General Provisions. Section 101, Purpose and Authorization. The purpose of Bulletin 137 is to set rules and regulations needed to establish minimum standards for health, safety, and well-being of children in early learning centers and ensure the maintenance of those standards. Legislative authorization designates authority for the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education, BESE, to establish and maintain the statewide licensing standards and for the Division of Licensing to fall within the Louisiana Department of Education. Section 103, Definitions. This section contains some definitions providers should know in order to understand licensing regulations. Some key definitions are child daycare center, any place or center operated by any institution, political subdivision, society, agency, corporation, person or persons, or any other group for the purpose of providing care, supervision, and guidance of 7 or more children, not including those related to the caregiver, unaccompanied by parent or legal custodian on a regular basis for at least 12.5 hours in a continuous 7-day week. Early Learning Center. Any child daycare center, early Head Start Center, or standalone pre-kindergarten program that is not attached to a school. License. Any license issued by the department to operate an early learning center. Providers are owners, operators, and directors of a child care center. Academic approval. Verification by the department that a Type 3 early learning center is meeting the performance and academic standards required in Bulletin 140, the Louisiana Early Childhood Care and Education Network. Full time. The physical presence at the center Monday through Friday for at least 32 hours. Supervision. The function of observing, overseeing, and guiding a child or a group of children that includes awareness of and responsibility for the ongoing activity of each child and being near enough to intervene if needed. Supervision requires physical presence with visual contact, accountability for the care of the children, knowledge of activity requirements, and knowledge of the abilities and needs of the children. Chapter 1, General Provisions Quiz. Choose the correct answer. The purpose of Bulletin 137 is to set forth rules and regulations necessary to implement the provisions of Revised Statute 17-407-31 that requires the State Board of Elementary and Secondary Education to establish statewide minimum standards for A, the health, safety, and well-being of children in early learning centers, B, ensure maintenance for these standards in the Child Care Assistance Program, C, regulate conditions in early learning centers through programs of licensing administered by the Department of Education, and D, the health, safety, and well-being of children in early learning centers to ensure maintenance of these standards and regulate conditions in early learning centers through a program of licensing administered by the department. D. Fill in the blank. Blank is verification by the department that a Type 3 early learning center is meeting the performance and academic standards required in Bulletin 140, the Louisiana Early Childhood Care and Education Network. Academic approval. True or false? A child daycare center provides care to 7 or more children on a regular basis for at least 12.5 hours in a continuous week. True. Fill in the blank. Blank is the physical presence at the center Monday through Friday for at least 32 hours. Full time. Fill in the blank. Blank is the function of observing, overseeing, and guiding a child or group of children that includes awareness of and responsibility for the ongoing activity of each child and being near enough to intervene if needed. Supervision. Chapter 3, Licensure. Section 301, Requirement of Licensure. The following programs are required to be licensed. Any program serving 7 or more children and operating at least 12.5 hours in a continuous week. All early learning centers, which include child care centers, early Head Start, and pre-kindergarten programs not attached to a school. A pre-kindergarten program operated by a public school serving children in grades kindergarten and above, and in which all children have not reached age 4 by September 30th of the current school year shall be licensed. A pre-kindergarten program operated by a private school serving children in grades kindergarten and above, and in which all children have not reached age 3 by September 30th of the current school year shall be licensed. Section 303, Exemptions from Licensure. Public or non-public day schools serving children in grades kindergarten and above, including any pre-K attached, except as provided in Section 301B and 301C. Camps and all care given without charge. Centers operated by a recognized religious organization qualified as tax exempt and not operating more than 24 hours in a continuous 7-day week. Children in programs licensed or operated by the Louisiana Department of Health or Department of Children and Family Services. Section 305, Operating Without a License, Registry, and Penalties. If found operating without a license, the operator can be fined no less than $1,000 a day for each day of the offense operating without a license. The department will file suit for injunctive relief in the district court in the parish where the center is located to enjoin the owner and operator from continuing. The department then will publish on its website in a statewide registry the names of the individuals that have an existing court order prohibiting them from operating an early learning center without a current valid early learning center license. Section 307, Types of Licenses. There are 3 types of licenses in the Early Learning Center licensing regulations. Type 1. A Type 1 license is owned and operated by a church or religious organization that is qualified as tax exempt under Section 501c, and they do not directly or indirectly receive any state, federal funds. Please be advised that any Type 1 license holder may voluntarily seek to become a Type 2 or Type 3 license holder. Type 2. The only source of state or federal funds is from the USDA Food and Nutrition Program. A Type 2 license holder may seek to become a Type 3 license holder. Type 3. Type 3 license holders directly or indirectly receive state or federal funds other than the federal Food and Nutrition Program funding. They must also meet the performance and academic standards of the Early Childhood Care and Education Network regarding kindergarten readiness as determined by BESI, which is academic approval. Let's complete a quick matching exercise to see if you can identify the correct license type based on the statements listed. Type 1, they must be owned or operated by a church or religious organization that is qualified as tax exempt under Section 501c. Type 1s do not receive any state or federal funds directly or indirectly, and they may also voluntarily seek to become a Type 2 or Type 3 license holder. Type 2, the only source of state or federal funding is from the USDA's Food and Nutrition Program, and they may also seek to become a Type 3 license. Type 3. Type 3s directly or indirectly receive state or federal funds other than the Food and Nutrition Program funding, and they must also meet the performance and academic standards regarding kindergarten readiness. Section 309, Term of License. The department is authorized to determine the period for which a license shall be valid. A license is valid for the period for which it is issued unless the license is revoked or suspended by the department for non-compliance with licensing laws, regulations, or minimum standards. Section 311, Posting of License. Each early learning center shall display its current license in a prominent place at the center. So what this means is, if at the entrance of your center you have space available for a bulletin board, this would be a great place to post a license at an early learning center. Section 313, Annual Licensure Fees. The annual licensing fee is determined by the capacity of the center. So if your license capacity has been determined for 15 or fewer children, your annual licensure fee would be $25. If you receive a range between 16 and 15 children as your license capacity, your annual licensure fee would be $100. If you receive a determined license capacity of 51 and 100 children, your annual licensure fee would be $175. If you receive a capacity of 101 or more children, your annual licensure fee would be $250. Please note that annual licensure fees do not apply to Type 1 centers who are operated by churches or religious organizations. Section 315, Inspections. The department, through its duly authorized licensing specialist, shall inspect at regular intervals not to exceed 1 year and as deemed necessary by the department without previous notice. The results of your inspection can be found posted online at Louisiana Believes on the Center School and Center Finder. Chapter 3, Licensure Quiz. True or false? Any program serving 7 or more children and operating at least 12 and a half hours in a continuous week is required to be licensed. True. Choose the correct answer. Which of the following describes a Type 1 license? A, issued to an early learning center that receives state or federal funding. B, issued to an early learning center that must meet the performance and academic standards, or C, issued to an early learning center that is owned or operated by a church or religious organization that is qualified as tax exempt under Section 501C. C. Choose the correct answer. Which of the following describes a Type 2 license? A, issued to the early learning center whose only source of state or federal funds is from the USDA's Food and Nutrition Program. B, issued to an early learning center that must meet the performance and academic standards. Or C, issued to an early learning center that directly or indirectly receives state or federal funds other than the Federal Food and Nutrition Program. C. Choose the correct answer. Which of the following describes a Type 3 license? A, issued to an early learning center that is owned or operated by a church or religious organization that is qualified as tax exempt under Section 501C. B, issued to an early learning center that directly or indirectly receives state or federal funds other than the Federal Food and Nutrition Program. Or C, issued to an early learning center whose only source of state or federal funds is from the USDA's Food and Nutrition Program. B. True or false? Inspections will be conducted regularly, not to exceed 1 year, and as deemed necessary by the department without previous notice. True. Chapter 5, Ownership of Early Learning Centers. Section 501, Definitions. This section contains definitions of ownership types for early learning centers. Corporation, an entity incorporated in Louisiana or incorporated in another state and registered with the Secretary of State in Louisiana and legally authorized to do business in Louisiana. Individual owner, a natural person who directly owns a center without setting up a juridical entity. Partnership, any license issued by the department to operate an early learning center. Section 503, individuals and entities as owners for licensing purposes. Individuals by organizational type who are considered owners for licensing purposes. Individual, a person who owns a center without setting up a judicial entity and their spouse if the center was opened after the owner is married. Partnership, all limited or general partners and managers, including but not limited to all persons registered as limited. Head Start, the individual responsible for supervising Head Start Center directors. Church-owned, government entity or university-owned. Any clergy member or board member present in the Early Learning Center during the hours of operation or when children are present. Corporations, which includes LLCs. Any person who has 25% or greater share in the ownership or management of the business, or any person who has less than 25% share and meets the required criteria. Chapter 5, Ownership of Early Learning Centers Quiz. Fill in the blank. Blank is any entity incorporated in Louisiana or incorporated in another state and registered with the Secretary of State in Louisiana and legally authorized to do business in Louisiana. Corporation. Fill in the blank. Blank is the right that confers on a person direct, immediate, and exclusive authority over a thing. Ownership. True or false? A clergy member who works at the center when children are present is considered an owner. True. True or false? Head Start chief administrators are considered owners for licensing purposes. True. True or false? A person who has less than 25% share in a corporation and hires staff is not an owner. False. Chapter 7, Licensing Process and Procedures. Section 701, Initial Application Process. Applications for licensure of new early learning centers must be submitted using the department's online electronic system, which is CAFE. All centers must provide the department with a current email address. All communication from the department is sent via email to the most recent address provided. Section 701, Initial Application Process. When applying for a new license, the following items have to be met and written verification has to be received by the department before a license can be issued. A completed initial application with the 25 application fee and CAFE, current Office of State Fire Marshal approval, current Office of Public Health approval, city fire approval if applicable, zoning approval, certificate of occupancy approval if applicable, academic approval by the department if a Type 3 center, the full licensure fee, a licensure inspection verifying compliance with all minimum standards, a CCCBC-based determination of eligibility for child care purposes from the department for all owners, operators, and staff, and written documentation establishing ownership of the center. Section 703, Initial Inspection Process. What to expect during an initial licensing inspection? Department staff will conduct a full survey to determine if the center is in compliance with all licensing laws, regulations, and minimum standards. This is the appropriate time if there are any questions or uncertainties about any regulations to speak with the licensing specialist at the time of this visit. Department staff will also measure the center and playground to obtain the center's license capacity. If necessary, we would cite deficiencies and generate a report if any non-compliance. If any non-compliance is found, a follow-up will be conducted until all deficiencies have been cleared and corrected. Please note that if the facility is in operation without a license, the initial licensing inspection will not be conducted, the application will be denied, and the department will pursue appropriate legal remedies. Section 705, Access. Which of the following statements is true? Departmental staff shall have all access to the center. Departmental staff shall be allowed to view video recordings as a part of an investigation of a complaint or incident. Departmental staff shall be allowed to have access to all files, records, and recordings. Departmental staff shall be allowed to interview any center staff as deemed necessary by the department. Departmental staff shall be permitted to verify that private areas are inaccessible to children. Departmental staff shall be allowed to have access upon request at any time during any operations hours. Section 707, Fees. All fees must be paid to the Louisiana Department of Education through its electronic payment system, and they are non-refundable. The electronic payment system is CAFE. Section 711, Renewal Applications. A license must be renewed by the last day of the month the current license expires. Renewal applications should be submitted using the department's online electronic system prior to the first day of the month in which the current license expires. If a complete renewal application, including the annual licensure fee and all required documentation, is not received by the last day of the month in which the license expires, the license will expire, it will not be renewed, and the owner will have to complete an initial application to resume operations. Section 713, Renewal and Other Inspection Procedures. When applying to renew a license, the following items must be met and verified to be received by the department prior to renewing the license. A completed renewal application, Office of State Fire Marshal approval, Office of Public Health approval, City Fire approval if applicable, zoning approval, certificate of occupancy if applicable, academic approval by the department if a Type 3 center, the full licensure fee, an annual licensure inspection verifying compliance with minimum standards. Please note that if a center has documentation establishing that the center requested an inspection by the Office of Public Health or State Fire Marshal prior to the existing license expiration, these approvals may be submitted within 90 days of the date of the renewal. So what this means is, if you've contacted the fire marshal, email them and have written documentation that you reached out to the fire marshal at least the first week prior to the expiration of your license, these approvals may be submitted within 90 days of the date of renewal, and your license will be renewed. Chapter 7, Licensing Process and Procedures Quiz. Fill in the blank. Applications for licensure of new early learning centers renewal of a license and/or reporting changes should be submitted using the department's online electronic system. Fill in the blank. Department staff provide blank in writing in order to view a video recording for a complaint or incident. Information about the complaint or incident, including the approximate date, time, location, and description. Fill in the blank. During the license renewal process, a center is required to have an annual license inspection by the department, current approvals by the Department of Public Health, Office of State Fire Marshal, City Fire if applicable, and academic approval by the department if a Type 3 center, blank the expiration of an existing license. Before. Fill in the blank. If a center has documentation establishing that the center requested an inspection by the Office of Public Health or the Office of State Fire Marshal prior to the expiration of the existing license, these approvals may be submitted to the department within how many calendar days of the date of the license renewal? 90. True or false? If an early learning center operates summer and/or holiday camps at the location, such care shall be included under a single license for the location. True. Chapter 9, Changes Requiring a New License. Section 901, Change in Location. An early learning center license is only valid for the location it was issued for and for the owners listed on the application. A change in location is considered a new operation, so a new application and fee for licensure must be submitted and a new license must be obtained prior to operation. The change in location process is similar to the initial application process. If a currently licensed center closed and the children are relocated to a temporary location, it is considered a new operation, and a new application and fee for licensure must be submitted and a new license must be obtained prior to the operation of the temporary location. Section 903, Change in Ownership. An early learning center license is only valid for the owners listed on the application. When there is a change in ownership, the current license is non-transferable. A new application and fee for licensure must be submitted and approved prior to the ownership change. The following are considered a change of ownership: a change in federal tax ID number, change in state tax ID number, change in profit status, any transfer of partial or full ownership from one individual entity to another individual or juridical entity. Termination of child care services by one owner and beginning of services by a different owner without a break in services to children. Section 905, change in license type. An early learning center must submit a written request and a $25 change fee using the department's online electronic system, CAFE, in order to change a license type. Section 9, changes requiring a new license. Quiz. True or false? When a center changes location, it is considered a new operation. A new application and fee for licensure must be submitted and a new license obtained prior to opening at the new location. True. Choose the correct answer. Which changes require a new license? A, change in location. B, change in license type. C, change in ownership. D, change in federal or state tax ID number. Or E, all of the above. E. True or false? It is not necessary to obtain a new license if a new owner is added, as long as that owner is a family member. False. Choose the correct answer. What is a temporary closure? A closure of more than 14 calendar days but less than 29 calendar days. B, a closure of more than 5 calendar days but less than 30 calendar days. C, closure of more than 3 calendar days but less than 5 calendar days. Or D, closure of more than 2 calendar days but less than 7 calendar days. B. Fill in the blank. A center should notify the department in writing of a temporary closure. Blank. Within 1 day. Congratulations, you have just completed course 1 of the 4 courses on the new licensing regulations. If you need any additional assistance, please do not hesitate to call or email your licensing consultant using the number 225-342-9905 or email licensing@ldelicensing@la.gov.